Tonight, an emotional ex-girlfriend testifies against Sean Diddy Combs. An emotional cousin testifies in support of the Menendez Brothers. And an emotional reaction in the Middle East as the president makes a big announcement. I'm Elizabeth Vargas. America's News starts right now.
Tonight, a 9 months pregnant Cassie Ventura breaks down on the stand at the Sean Diddy Combs sex trafficking trial as she recounts the drug-fueled sex marathons that were directed by her ex. Why she didn't refuse to participate. Then,
there's a moderate risk of violence because if the Menendezes are released, they're going to head and not be in a highly structured setting like a prison.
Menendez Brothers' long-awaited resentencing hearing finally begins. Their own family members take the stand to testify they have changed. Will Eric and Lyle Menendez soon walk free? And President Trump is in the Middle East, hoping to bring peace to the region and business to the United States.
The golden age of the Middle East can proceed right alongside of us.
He was in Saudi Arabia today, calling on leaders to honor him by recognizing Israel. We're live in the Middle East for answers.
Hello, everybody. We're so glad you're with us. We begin tonight with the latest on the Sean Diddy Combs trial, where a torrent of lurid details came out in court as witness testimony continued today. And right off the bat, jurors were faced with the central challenge of this case. Are acts that many would consider obscene, even monstrous, necessarily criminal? And are other acts that are most certainly criminal relevant or not to the specific charges Mr. Combs is facing? The testimony of the prosecution's star witness, Cassie Ventura, cut straight to the heart of the matter. Ventura took the stand today, testifying about her sometimes violent relationship with her ex-boyfriend, Sean Diddy Combs, and the obscene sexual acts she testified he forced her to perform. With her very visible baby bump, she's 9 months pregnant, the government needed to get Cassie's testimony before she gives birth, or their case might fall apart. And today, she didn't hold back. Just minutes after swearing in, Ventura was shown an image from hotel surveillance video that appears to show Sean Combs savagely beating her. Now, neither Combs nor his lawyers dispute that's him on the tape. So did Cassie Ventura. She testified, "That's me and Sean." She later added, "We were having an encounter, what we call a freak-off." Now, these so-called freak-offs are at the center of the prosecution's case. They accuse Combs of running a criminal enterprise that engaged in racketeering, sex trafficking, and transportation to engage in prostitution. Ventura said she took part in her first freak-off just after she turned 22. At times, through tears, she described drinking and consuming copious amounts of drugs that included ecstasy, cocaine, and ketamine, and then having sex with male escorts in sessions that could last for as long as 4 days. All of it allegedly orchestrated and directed by the music mogul, who's on trial here. After these freak-offs, Ventura testified that baby oil often coated the walls and door handles of these hotel rooms, and that sometimes the bed sheets would be stained with blood and urine. The defense claims all of that sex, though deviant, was between consensual adults. Baby oil is not contraband, no matter how much you use. And the defense says that the notorious video that may be proof of domestic violence, but not federal sex trafficking or racketeering. But Ventura's testimony today painted a far different picture of a young woman forced to do degrading things by a man she both loved and feared. Ventura first met Sean Combs in 2005 when she was just 19 and he was 37. He was the powerful CEO of a record label. She signed a 10-album deal with his Bad Boy Records. She only released one album. The freak-offs, she said, took priority over the music. And Diddy, Sean Combs, she said, had full and total control over her life. Let's go right now to NewsNation's Caitlin Becker outside the courthouse for us in Lower Manhattan. Caitlin, this was very graphic and emotional testimony. I'm curious how it landed with the jurors.
Elizabeth, they were riveted by the testimony. When we were in the courtroom yesterday, jurors kind of got, I wouldn't say distracted, but they looked around the room at times. They didn't turn their eyes away from Cassie Ventura. From the moment she walked into this courtroom, she's absolutely stunning, clearly very, very pregnant. She walked in with her head held high, sat at the witness stand, and began giving her testimony. Now, this is the first time, Elizabeth, that she and Combs have been really in the same room together for many, many years. So when she walked in, he turned and watched her walk to the witness stand, and she did not look at him at all. She didn't cast her eyes over. She didn't turn her head. During the testimony, he kept his eyes on her as well. And it was a really tough day in the courthouse today. The testimony, as you said, was very, very graphic, vulgar at times, and emotional. She did break down in tears. And what I found really interesting, Elizabeth, is the moment she really needed to compose herself. With all of the graphic testimony she was giving about these freak-offs, you may have expected her to tear up and cry then. But when she cried is when she was telling the jury that she did all of this because she really just wanted him. She wanted him to love her. And that is when she needed the moment to compose herself there. But she took pauses, kind of a deep breath before she had to answer some of the tougher questions about violence and the sexual nature of their relationship. And interestingly, Diddy, for his part, reacted. You know that these defendants are told, don't show any emotion, don't react. But that was not the case today. He was nodding along sometimes. He was shaking his head no at times, taking notes when Cassie was testifying. And a few times at specific points, he was taking a note and then passing it to one of his defense attorneys, specifically the defense attorney who will cross-examine Cassie Ventura. So it does seem that he is being as active as he can be in his own defense there. But Elizabeth, the one really interesting point was there was two of them when Cassie was talking about the baby oil and how it needed to be reapplied multiple times, sometimes in increments of 5 minutes so that she quote unquote glistened. That moment, as well as the moment that she revealed the pseudonyms that he uses to check into hotels, he pushed his chair away from the defense table in a very kind of visible reaction to how she was speaking. And in the courtroom, his family is there, his mother, his 6 children. One of the mothers of his sons had to get up and leave the room, and she did not come back after they were getting into some of the more graphic talk about urination, Elizabeth.
Yeah, we're not even reporting on that aspect of the story, Caitlin, because it's just so, frankly, it's disgusting. I can't imagine what it was like for everybody in that courtroom to listen to that, much less for Cassie Ventura to testify to that. Caitlin Becker, live for us outside the courtroom. Thank you so much. I want to bring in our legal panel now. Jesse Weber is a NewsNation legal contributor and Law and Crime Network host, and Mercedes Colwin is a trial attorney, legal analyst, and co-host of the M&M Morning podcast. Great to have both of you here. Jesse, I want to start with you. This was really unbelievable. I think we all knew that we'd all seen what the charges were, but when you actually heard the details that these freak-off parties that she says took over her life were happening almost weekly and would last sometimes 2 to 4 days, and then she would need several days just to recover. She wasn't allowed to sleep. She had those drugs, the copious drugs she was taking, were to keep her awake.
Let me put it into context about why this is important, aside from being lurid and disgusting. The reason, the more they can say, about the drugs and her having to do this for 36 to 72 hours and how disgusting these sex acts were, the jury is meant to believe this was without her consent. Force, fraud, coercion, that is sex trafficking, okay? Racketeering, when she said that he had assistants and he had handlers and he had security that kept checking in on them and she couldn't do anything she wanted to do, and Combs kept controlling her life in all these aspects. That's how you get to racketeering. They were very specific about how this is going to help their case, but I have to tell you, as disgusting as this was, the jury is going to have an important question. It's going to come up on cross-examination. Why didn't she leave? And did she properly communicate enough that she didn't want to do this? Now, there was emails to suggest this. She said Combs knew it. But if she didn't articulate it enough, that is a problem for the prosecution. Because if this is consent, which is the defense they're moving with, that is something for the defense to work with.
So here's my counter argument. She was 19 years old when she met Diddy. He was 36. Now, and then now we move that needle to 22 when the sexual encounters began. She was 22, he was almost 40. So we're talking about a very young individual. And someone, I'm sure it'll be played out, the level of control that he had over her, Jesse, and we know this, Elizabeth, she talks about the fact that she feared him. She was afraid of his violence.
She testified today that he paid her rent, he provided her car, he provided her phone, and that he would routinely take these things away from her.
To punish her.
To punish her. He would take away all her electronic devices, kick her out of her house, controlled everything from what she wore to how she wore her hair to the color of nail polish she had on her fingernails. It's a relationship that I mean, really, it is all about control and dominance.
Completely. And anyone said, and now, by the way, I'm sure it's already been reported that the jurors, some of these jurors were visibly upset and they were shifting in their seats. They looked concerned. They turned to Combs and scowled at him. Those are really important. These unspoken utterances and these unspoken expressions by the jury. Look, as a trial lawyer, that's the first thing I look at. What is that jury looking at? How is the jury responding to this? It's clear that they're thinking, oh my God, this woman, just like what we said. We said this before the show started. We cannot believe the lurid details that came forward. But to your point, Jesse, it really has to be going down to whether or not it was consensual. Her age is going to come into effect here, and I think that's what the juries are going to look at.
Toward the end of the day, the prosecutors took Cassie Ventura frame by frame through this hotel security video, asking her what was happening there. And she says what was going on in the hotel room on the 6th floor of the Intercontinental Hotel in 2016. They were having a freak-off, that during the freak-off, Combs punched her and gave her a black eye. She had a big movie premiere, that meant a lot to her, that she was in and was going to appear at this premiere. She got her things and left and made a point of saying, I didn't even put my shoes on because I thought I would move faster that way if I put my shoes on in the elevator. And on the video, you then see Combs with a towel wrapped around him approach her, grab her things, and kick her, punch her, drag her by the hair.
This is why this tape is so important. I said it before, I'll say it again. When she filed her lawsuit against him, this was one of the allegations in there. And when it came out, people were like, is this true or is this not true? Did he really do this, run down a hallway?
He denied it publicly.
That video comes out, changes the whole game, which is why I said it yesterday.
Then he issued a public apology.
Right.
He changed his story.
Yeah, they have no way to say it's not him on the tape, as much as they said it was altered, whatever.
Yeah.
The point is that they called the first witness yesterday, the security guard. The jury saw the tape. She comes to testify. This backs up what she said. And look, to counter my own argument before, if they say, well, she didn't speak up loud enough. If she knew if she spoke up, this is what could result. That's what the prosecution needs to say.
So Combs was at times, it seems, almost agitated while listening to her testimony. We heard Caitlin describe that in the courtroom, writing lots and lots and lots of notes, passing them to his lawyers. At one point, shaking his head. At one point, pushing himself back from the defense table. These defendants, like Sean Combs, have very expensive lawyers who've spent a lot of time telling him, everything you do will be scrutinized. Was this just a lack of self-control by him?
Without question. Elizabeth, you hit the nail on the head. You know how many times we tell our clients, you cannot have any expression. Keep it cool. Don't react. Don't nod. Don't get angry. Don't scowl. Because you know what? That jury's watching you every single moment. What do they have to do? Take notes, perhaps? But they're taking notes of what they are perceiving you as. So as a trial lawyer, as a defense attorney, I tell the clients, you cannot react in this courtroom. These jurors are sitting there watching your every single move.
Meantime, the judge is going to decide tomorrow morning whether or not, because Sean Combs also, there's testimony, he videotaped these freak-offs. Cassie Ventura testified she felt that was leverage against her, that he would leak those videos and make them public to punish her if she tried to leave. The judge is going to decide tomorrow whether or not the jury's going to see it.
So I think the jury's going to see it. I don't think the gallery's going to see it.
Okay.
I think that they will see it on monitors. They will have headphones. It's an important piece of evidence. If Combs is in the videos directing her to do X, Y, and Z, that's important for a sex trafficking analysis. I don't think the media, and as somebody who's part of the media, I don't think we should see it. I don't think the public should ever have an opportunity to see it whatsoever.
But the judge seems to be leaning a little bit. I mean, he's already said publicly that there's a First Amendment issue here and the freedom of the press is important. He has to decide whether those tapes have really any societal value.
I can't
I'm
see
with
any,
you.
yeah,
I'm with you.
I don't think they're...
Why would they be any societal value?
What will be important, though, is if it backs up what she testified to today, which is that every single one of these freak-offs, she was taking drugs to disassociate, to separate from herself. She testified that, so So, because she felt, quote, objectified, humiliated, disgusted by what she was being told to do. If those videotapes show Sean Combs directing this, as she said he did, that will be powerful.
Completely.
All right. Mercedes Colwin, Jesse Weber, thank you so much.
You got it.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
having us.
Coming up for us, President Trump got the royal welcome in Saudi Arabia, but will this Middle East trip get progress as well as pomp? We're live in Doha with the very latest on the president's first foreign trip of his second term. And then later, emotional testimony as the Menendez brothers push for their bid and for freedom. It's all beginning in Los Angeles, in a courtroom there, their own family members taking the stand. Will they help them get out of jail?
The biggest trials in America have big moments this week, and Banfield has it all. Diddy, the Menendez Brothers, Brian Kohberger. The case isn't closed until you've seen it on Banfield. Weeknights 10/9 Central, only on NewsNation.
In case you were wondering, having friends within the Saudi royal family has its benefits. The Desert Kingdom literally rolled out the lavender carpet for President Trump. That was after the Saudi Air Force jets escorted Air Force One once it entered Saudi airspace. And then there was Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman enthusiastically breaking protocol and greeting the president on the tarmac, while Arabian horses carrying American flags flanked Trump's motorcade as he arrived at the royal court in Riyadh. Now, we all know Trump's fast food of choice is McDonald's, so out came the customized mobile McDonald's truck. We can assume there were also plenty of Diet Cokes on hand. But as far as official business is concerned, President Trump and the Saudi prince signed an economic agreement that is expected to bring in more than $600 billion to the United States. And some major business executives were in tow on this trip. Leaders from BlackRock, Amazon, NVIDIA, and OpenAI, and of course, Elon Musk, followed behind. Some of them signed their own deals. NVIDIA will sell more than 18,000 of its latest artificial intelligence chips to a Saudi startup. President Trump also addressed conflicts in the Middle East. The president pushed for a new nuclear deal with Iran, and he stressed Iran will never have a nuclear weapon. That got a loud applause in Riyadh, since the Saudis are regional rivals and sectarian enemies of Iran. Trump also said that he would move to lift sanctions on Syria, giving the Syrians a chance to prosper after overthrowing dictator Bashar al-Assad in December. That was met with huge emotional reaction on the streets in Syria. President Trump hailed Saudi Arabia as a model for a reimagined Middle East. It's a model of government, human rights record, and treatment of women notwithstanding, focusing instead on economic prosperity and regional stability. And today, the president made a pitch to Saudi Arabia to join the Abraham Accords, started in his first term, and recognize Israel.
And it's my fervent hope, wish, and even my dream that Saudi Arabia, a place I have such respect for, especially over the last fairly short period of time, what you've been able to do, but we'll soon be joining the Abraham Accords. I think it'll be a tremendous tribute to your country, and it will be something that's really going to be very important for the future of the Middle East. You'll be greatly honoring me, and you'll be greatly honoring all of those people that have fought so hard for the Middle East, and I really think it's going to be something special, but you'll do it in your own time, and that's what I want, and that's what you want, and that's the way it's going to be.
President Trump set to be on the ground here in Doha tomorrow, and the city is preparing for his arrival as well as getting ready for several big announcements. One major announcement we're learning of tonight, and this is something that we've been watching for, and there have been reports about a deal potentially being reached, but we are hearing now from a source familiar that Qatar Airlines has secured an agreement to purchase 150 Boeing jets. Now, that could reach up to potentially 200 jets when all is said and done. This could mean $100 billion coming in with this deal, as well as thousands of jobs potentially coming to the United States with this this deal. Now, Boeing did not comment on this, nor did Qatar Airlines, and the White House says they didn't want to get ahead of the announcement, but this could be something major that the president would announce tomorrow when he arrives here in Doha. Now, Qatar is also applauding the president lifting the sanctions on Syria. Then the president is also set to meet with Syria's president tomorrow before he heads here to Doha. And as we said, the city readying for his arrival and getting ready for some more pomp and circumstance here. We're already seeing the American flag on some of the skyscrapers here in the city behind me, as well as American flags lining the streets as he gets ready to arrive here in Doha.
All right, Kelly Meyer reporting live from Doha. That would be a big announcement if it happens. Thank you so much. And joining us now is Trump's former chief of staff and NewsNation political contributor Mick Mulvaney, and Julia Manchester, political reporter for TheHill.com. Julia, first of all, let's go back to the big announcement that did actually happen today. And this was this announcement on Saudi investment of $600 billion. If this happens, that would be a big deal.
That would be a big deal for President Trump. Obviously, we know that, on a personal level, the Trump organization has certainly been looking to, spread its influence or spread its tentacles, if you will, in the Middle East. But for President Trump, from a geopolitical standpoint, look, he's looking to curry favor with the Saudis as they try to combat Iranian influence in the region, or, kind of put up a firm front against Iran. So President Trump very much, I think, in this visit, putting on a show, in many ways for the Iranians, for, any other U.S. adversaries looking in on this.
Mick, he's really, really trying to convince the Saudis to join the Abraham Accords. We just heard him speaking a brief clip of his speech where he talked about that, how much he really wants that. It would normalize relations between Israel and the Saudis. The holdup seems to be, at this point, Benjamin Netanyahu's plans to move into Gaza and occupy it indefinitely. The Saudis have insisted for many, many years now, you've got to do something for the Palestinians before we'll normalize relations.
Yeah, and it's probably not a surprise to anybody, Elizabeth, to say that the Middle East is very, very complicated. It was never going to be easy to pull off what they have accomplished even so far with the Abraham Accords. Keep in mind that these Abraham Accords are really the signature sort of accomplishment of the first Trump administration, and they'd love to see them completed during the second. I think you could arguably make the case that if his name wasn't Donald Trump, or maybe they didn't have January 6th, that he probably should have won the Nobel Peace Prize for these things. They're tremendously innovative and far-reaching. But they're not finished yet, and it's going to be hard to finish because the Middle East is a very complicated place. Does Trump have the ability to get the Israelis to do what they need to do in order to seal the deal? That will be an interesting thing to watch in the coming months.
Yeah, but Mick, we note Trump is not visiting Israel on this trip, unlike his first trip to the Middle East in his first term when he did. And this trip comes just one day after Trump's friend and negotiator Steve Witkoff helped arrange the release of Adon Alexander as the last American hostage remaining in Gaza. Apparently this happened because the Arab Americans for Trump contacted Steve Witkoff and said, we've got a connection with Hamas. They want to release the last American hostage. Can we, match you up with them? Steve Witkoff, after verifying it was in fact Hamas, managed to get the release of Adon Alexander all without the Israelis involved. It was an end run.
But still unequivocally a good thing. I don't think it bespeaks sort of a broken relationship between the Americans and the Israelis. You do what you have to do in these circumstances to get your citizens home. We've been trying since, more than a year now to get this young man home. So it's a success. I wouldn't read too much into it. You might as well sit back and enjoy the success for the next couple of days. Look, when Trump went to the Mideast in 2017, he also got attention for not going to Israel. Those types of things get worked out, Elizabeth. Benjamin Netanyahu has already been received at the White House, I think once, maybe twice, if I haven't lost track of the count. That relationship is going to be strong. The question is, can Trump broker a deal between the Israelis and the Arab countries in order to finalize these Abraham Accords? It's going to be a central focus of his foreign policy for the whole second term. Yeah,
it's just interesting. So many of the hostage families have, for months, if not years now, accused Netanyahu of prioritizing the war over the hostages. And in this case, this latest hostage, thank God he was released, but he was released not because of anything Israel did. It was because of what this group, and Steve Witkoff from the Trump administration managed to do.
Yeah, but I guess, do you blame a country's leader for prioritizing the war? I mean, he's sympathetic, obviously, to the plight of all of the hostages, but you can't make them the priority. You're at war with another country just because the country might have some of your citizens as hostage or citizens of other nations as hostages doesn't change your priorities of defending your nation. So, listen, I understand the criticism. I think at this point in time, it's overblown. The hostages are back. That's great. Let's see if we can continue to rebuild the relationships in the Middle East.
One of the hostages is back. Some still remain, and I think that there has long been a complicated relationship with Netanyahu and the Israeli public, certainly over his priorities and what he values most. Julia, I want to switch gears entirely and talk about the blow-up today where we continue. There's a new book coming out on Joe Biden and his presidency and his decision to run for re-election, and new revelations that his own staff was actually contemplating maybe he would have to use a wheelchair if he was reelected president and went into his second term, that his own doctor was very, very concerned about his health and wasn't sure that continuing to run, much less run the country, was the best thing for his health. The key question now is, was there a cover-up? I mean, who knew all of this? Why on earth are so many people speaking, like racing to journalists to say, let me tell you what I saw?
Well, I think this is a question we've really been asking ourselves for the past year. I would say even before that really disastrous debate performance for Joe Biden. But, there's going to be obviously a lot of questions going forward, whether there was a cover up, and what I think is interesting about all of this is all coming, all of these tell-all books from the Biden administration and these revelations are coming as President Biden himself looks to reinsert himself into the public sphere. Last week, he gave his first post-presidency interview to the BBC. Then he sat down with The View. And, we talked to a lot of Democratic operatives and strategists following those interviews who seemed to be frustrated that he was doing this right now because it continues to shine a spotlight on a very, I would say, unforgiving, part of the Democratic Party's recent history in many ways, especially at a time when the party is trying to move on, find its, new voice and find a new leader, a new messenger. I mean, as we're speaking right now, you have Pete Buttigieg holding a town hall in Iowa with vote vets. You have these other, Democratic parties, Democratic rising stars doing events, doing interviews and trying to get into the spotlight. But President Biden is continuing to sort of make these headlines.
Yeah, and honestly, the wrong kind of headlines. I think a lot of people watched his interviews last week and didn't think he helped his case. He's clearly getting out, trying to get ahead of what's coming out in these books, which is damning, both for the staff around him as well as party leaders who were either unable or unwilling to convince him to step aside. Julia Manchester and Mick Mulvaney, always great to talk to both of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
All right, coming up for us, will the Menendez brothers commit violence again if they're released from prison? That is the question being posed to relatives, the Menendez relatives, at a key hearing today. One cousin bet her life that they would not. That's next. All right, to California now, where we could be hearing from convicted killers Eric and Lyle Menendez themselves tomorrow as they make a bid for freedom on day 2 of their long-awaited, often canceled and then rescheduled resentencing hearing. The brothers have served more than 3 decades of their life without parole sentences for the 1989 murders of their parents, Jose and Kitty Menendez. The hearing could determine if the brothers are eligible for lesser sentences, paving the way for a possible release from prison. The scene outside the courtroom today was chaotic, with defense attorney Mark Garagos making it clear he thinks it's time to set the brothers free. But L.A. County District Attorney Nathan Hochman says not yet. He says the brothers first need to come clean about their years of lies and deceit. He added that recent infractions by both brothers in prison have made them both a greater risk to society if they are released on parole.
their risk level is no longer low. It is moderate. There's a moderate risk of violence because if the Menendezes are released, they're going to head and not be in a highly structured setting like a prison. And if they can't follow the rules in prison, then the confidence level of these psychologists have dropped on whether or not they will now pose a risk of violence in society.
But family members of the two brothers disagree with D.A. Hochman. After withdrawing a motion to have Hochman removed from the case, 3 of them gave emotional testimony in court today. All of them cousins of Lyle and Eric, who all support their release. Anna Maria Baralt said the brothers are not the same as they were in 1989. When asked if she thought they would ever commit a violent offense again, she said, "No chance. I'd bet my life on it." She ended with an appeal to the judge saying, "I pray that you will help us." All right, for more on all of this, let's go to Matt Murphy, former homicide prosecutor in California, and Brian Claypool, criminal defense attorney. Great to have you both here. Brian, all 3 of these cousins made these very emotional appeals to the judge and said the family has completely and fully forgiven them for murdering the brothers' parents. Is that alone enough to win their release?
Hey, Elizabeth, nice to see you again. Absolutely not. Look, I get that the family wants to come into court. They want to be supportive. They want to say there's no chance that the Menendez brothers will ever commit a crime again. But look, at the end of the day, in my opinion, you need to have a forensic psychologist. Like if I was representing the Menendez brothers, I would have had an independent forensic psychologist get into that prison and speak to these 2 young men several times, interview them, have them go through therapy sessions, and then develop the forensic psychologist's own opinion as to whether these guys are going to commit a crime in society again. So I can't imagine that the family saying they're not going to do this is going to be enough. Elizabeth, they haven't spent any time with these brothers in jail to have any factual basis or foundation other than emotional to support conclusions.
Matt, prosecutors in their cross-examinations of the cousins brought up instances where it's alleged the brothers pressured witnesses in their first trial to lie on the stand. D.A. Hochman says the brothers continue to lie to this day when they say they killed in self-defense.
Well, first of all, Brian's exactly right. This takes a lot more than the emotional testimony of families. And they did do that. There's evidence they solicited one of Lyle's girlfriends to allege that Jose Menendez had raped her. Sound kind of familiar? So what everybody seems to have forgotten is these guys, first of all, they murdered 2 people. The parents have always been spoken about as one block. These are 2 human lives, and they killed their mom by putting a shotgun to her face. That actually happened. This has been appealed to the highest levels of the federal court, to the Ninth Circuit, and they have shown zero remorse for what they did. And those infractions that you spoke of, Elizabeth, those were major rule violations. Each one of these guys, during the pendency of this resentencing, so this is very, very recent, got caught with cell phones in prison. That's more dangerous than a shank.
Why? Why is that so
because
dangerous?
Because a shank, you can get somebody within arm's reach, essentially. A cell phone in the hand of a murderer in state prison means they can take out hits, they can intimidate witnesses, they can commit additional crimes. That is a major rule violation, and that's during the pendency of this, which friends of mine in the DA's office, now Brian's got many friends there too, in their mind, that shows the arrogance of both Lyle and Eric Menendez.
So, Matt, the prosecution is calling no witnesses. They're relying instead on this parole risk assessment report, which basically sounds a lot like what Brian was just saying the defense attorney should be doing as well. I mean, this is a study of the 2 brothers and what's been going on. They've said that Eric and Lyle have a, quote, moderate risk of reoffense. Put that in perspective. That's not low, but it's not high. Is that the medium option?
Right. So I've done a lot of these parole hearings with lifers that are up for parole for murder. And the first thing they look for is whether or not they have what is known as insight, whether they have taken accountability for what they did. And given the behavior of Lyle and Eric, they programmed in prison because they in order to get knocked down from a level 4 prison to a level 3, they have to participate in these programs. We keep hearing about that. But they've also gotten caught with drugs. They've violated the rules multiple times, and they've refused to accept responsibility for what they did, still claiming that they acted in self-defense, which, according to the Ninth Circuit, it was absurd.
Brian, there was a bit of a victory, I think, you correct me if I'm wrong, for Eric and Lyle today, in the sense that they get to make a statement tomorrow, but they do not have to be subject to cross-examination after they make that statement.
Yeah, Elizabeth, look, I don't know how far that's going to go with this judge. And to Matt's point, look, at the end of the day, you and I talked a few days ago about this, and I didn't know about the portion of the risk assessment report that said that they're a moderate risk.
Yeah, I didn't either.
I didn't know that. Look, when you've committed a heinous crime like that and you're trying to say self-defense, yet there was no evidence at trial that there's an imminent threat. That's the standard. There had to have been an imminent threat of these two young boys being in harm's way for them to allege the self-defense.
Right.
But look, you need no risk. Like, I think Matt would agree. Like, with a heinous crime like this, you've got to have a risk assessment report coming back. There's very little risk. But when you've got moderate, that worries me. And Vargas really doesn't have a forensic psychologist to counter that. What are these two guys going to come in and say? Hey, look, we're better. We're not going to do anything wrong in the community. There's no cross-exam. I don't think that's going to carry a lot of weight.
All right. Really fascinating stuff. Brian Claypool, Matt Murphy. We will hear more tomorrow after day 2 of that hearing. Really appreciate you guys weighing in tonight.
Thank you so much.
All right, coming up for us, we've got a NewsNation exclusive, a behind-the-scenes look at a new type of drone that could revolutionize Navy operations. You'll see it first, right after this. Drone technology is evolving rapidly, and nowhere more so than on the battlefield. The Russia-Ukraine war has seen drones emerge not only as a utility weapon, but as a centerpiece of modern warfare. And people are still talking about those mystery drones spotted in the skies of New Jersey and other states last December, many fearing or suspecting that those drones may have been conducting reconnaissance for America's adversaries. Now it looks like drones might not just revolutionize combat and reconnaissance, but military logistics as well. It may sound a little mundane, but keeping U.S. Navy carriers fully stocked with medicine, supplies, and equipment, it's all vital to their combat capabilities, and it can be really expensive and even dangerous. Well, now a company in Colorado Springs is hoping to change that. NewsNation's Alex Capriello traveled there to get an exclusive look at the first-of-its-kind drone that's part helicopter, part airplane, and all American.
The XB4, fully autonomous, takes off and lands with the click of a button. We're able to take off and land without a runway.
What you're seeing now could be the future of the U.S. military drone system. Vertical takeoff and landing technology, courtesy of Aerodynamics, an unmanned aircraft builder out of Colorado Springs.
We can go and operate out of any austere location, whether it be up here in the mountains in Colorado, or on the deck of a small or a large ship, or even the deck of a small ship.
Aerodynamics breakthrough technology is the first of its kind. And what makes this drone, the XP4, so unique is its wings. When folded in, it allows the drone to take off vertically like a helicopter. But once airborne, those wings take less than 10 seconds to unfold, making it soar like an airplane.
Compact nature of the aircraft will make such a big difference operationally, not just for the military, but also commercial applications.
Aerodynamics just announced a $4.6 million contract expansion with the U.S. Navy to develop a fleet of these unmanned drones. When a battleship, aircraft carrier, or other vessel is deep out at sea, it can be costly and dangerous to use pilots to transport necessary equipment back and forth. Enter the XP4, which can be used to shuttle that gear for a fraction of the price without putting sailors in danger.
Right away you see it's a very small operating ground footprint.
The CEO also envisions a future where the drone is used to deliver medicine to remote locations or carry out covert recon missions.
Where you can truly go bring anything from anywhere to anywhere on demand and do it in a safe, economical way. That's going to unleash all kinds of opportunity, both for saving the world for democracy and for us and our allies.
Aerodynamics is already nearing completion of its much larger aircraft, the XP5, capable of lifting 50-pound payloads and delivering for much farther distances. They expect first flight to be by the end of the year. For NewsNation, I'm Alex Capriello.
Wow. All right, coming up for us, more on that bombshell testimony today from Cassie Ventura at the Sean Combs trial. Cassie told the court that Sean Combs ran out in the middle of a so-called freak-off, to confront his nemesis, rival hip-hop mogul, Suge Knight. Chris Cuomo is about to talk to Suge Knight from prison. Chris joins me next with a preview. All right, Chris Cuomo joins me now. Chris, you're going to talk more about the Sean Combs trial. You actually have spoken once before to Suge Knight, who was his arch nemesis. Suge Knight's in prison, and you're going to talk to him again tonight. He came up in trial testimony today.
Yes, the timing could not be better.
Yeah.
Dusty and I are very excited, mostly Dusty.
Mostly Dusty.
The idea that he was addressed by Cassie as one of the known threats, something that Combs had prepared for with weapons. Why? What did Suge Knight know about what Combs was doing with Cassie and others? How much of this was conventional wisdom? It's always interesting to get perspective of someone on the inside, and you don't get more inside than Suge Knight.
Yeah, it was, and her testimony included that he took a gun and asked her to put it in her purse.
Yes, and she was like super high or something and was afraid that the gun was going to go off because she was having, delusions. Look, the problem for Cassie, or the challenge with her testimony, is that it seems bizarre, extreme, frightening, sad, but does it seem unconsensual? That is the question that we're going to look at tonight.